In this lesson, we're going to look at how you can make web applications more accessible for people with visual impairment by using a technology called ARIA, or to give it its full name, Web Accessibility Initiative, Accessible Rich Internet Applications. This is the homepage on the W3C website. It's got a full breakdown of all the new features provided by ARIA. The basic idea is that ARIA defines a set of HTML attributes prefixed by ARIA. You can add these into your elements in a web page to describe the intent and to assist screen readers read out the content of the web page audibly. So, for example, you can define the roles of elements, the state, the properties of an element, and you can make it easier to navigate between different parts of a document. Obviously, this requires the user to have a screen reader. There are various different products on the marketplace. For example, there's a product called JAWS from Freedom Scientific Software. So you could purchase this and use it for assistive technology. There's another one called Thunder from Claro Software. There are other products as well. They all have the capability of reading ARIA tags in HTML documents to help visually impaired users navigate through the document. So we're going to have a look at 3 separate examples in this lesson. The first one is how you can make it easier for the user to navigate using the tab button between different parts of a document. One of the key goals of accessible software is the user should be able to navigate to anything just by using the tab button, so not using the mouse. Now, that's a bit of a problem because most HTML documents don't accept keyboard focus. Some do, obviously input controls, hyperlinks, text areas, they accept input focus, but most other controls don't. For example, a div, you can't tab to it by default. So to address this limitation, back in HTML4, they introduced a new attribute called tab index. And if you assign that attribute onto an element, it allows you to tab to that control using the keyboard. So I can select the first item, which has a tab index of 1. And then if I press the tab button, it'll take me to the next div, which has a tab index of 2. If I press tab again, notice it's taking me to the button. The button has a tab index of 3 in this example. You'll see that it's circumvented the third div. Because if you assign a tab index of -1, it means the control isn't part of the natural tab sequence, but you can tab to it programmatically. So when I click this button here, it runs some JavaScript code which looks for the div control and assigns it programmatic focus. So I'll press this button here, and as you can see, it's given input focus to the third div. So let's take a look at the code for that. It's in your project files folder. It's called ARIA keyboard navigation.html. So at the start of the document, I've defined some simple styles. And then lower down in the document, here's my HTML. Each div, as you can see, has a tab index. And interestingly, the third div has a tab index of -1. So in order for that to receive input focus, we'd need to run some code. And that's what happens when I click this button down here. It calls this function. This function gets the div called programmatic tab. That's this div down here. And then it gives it keyboard focus programmatically. So by setting the tab index, it allows the user to tab into controls that they wouldn't be able to otherwise, which then enables screen readers to read the content of those controls. Now, the second example we're going to look at is something called landmark roles. This HTML document has a header, a navigation area, some footers, and an aside. You can define ARIA role attributes which indicate to a screen reader the intent of each of these different types of element. So I'm going to take you into the code for that example. This is ARIA landmark roles.html. So the key point is the role attribute. The role attribute allows you to define the structure of the document to identify the purpose of individual controls. Banner indicates site-wide content, such as headers. There's also a role called navigation. So on my nav element here, I've set role to be navigation. And as you might imagine, this indicates an area where you have hyperlinks. A little bit lower down on line 28, I have a role called article. This is complementary. It sits alongside the article element in HTML5. An article is content that makes sense in its own right, such as a blog post or some comments on a blog in an online forum. If I scroll down a little further, I have another article here on line 44. So I've set its role to be article as well. And then have an aside on line 48. For asides, you can set the role to be complementary. This indicates some supporting content for the main page, such as help information. If I scroll down a little further in the document, on line 76, you can see I have a heading. I've set that role to be content info. Content info is used for things like footnotes, copyright notices, and links to privacy statements. So by setting the role, it allows the screen reader to understand the purpose of the elements so it can give more useful information back to the user. Okay, the third example we're going to look at in this lesson is called ARIA Live Regions. The concept of a live region is that it allows the document to announce changes in a region. So screen readers can effectively poll for updates to a region and tell the user that something's changed without the user having to lose focus from their current activity. So for example, if you had a chat application where some person had chatted to you and you were in the middle of typing, a screen reader would be able to announce the receipt of new information from the other user without having to take you from your current input control. So in this example, I have 3 divs saying hello world in English, French and Norwegian. When I click the start button, programmatically it starts adding list items to a list. And I can stop it, and then start it, and then stop it. Let me show you the code for this example. ARIA Live Regions.html. First of all, I'll show you the HTML at the bottom of the page. So we have some divs which display some simple content, and then a couple of buttons that allow me to start and stop the creation of new content. And the key point is down here. Here's my unordered list that'll display all the items as they get created. And you can set the ARIA Live property to indicate to the screen reader that you want the user to be alerted to changes to this content. This is a live region that the screen reader has to poll and notify the user if anything changes. So I've listed here in the comment some of the properties that you can set in this context. You can set ARIA Live to be off. That's actually the default, and it means that this region isn't live. The screen reader isn't going to tell the user about any changes. If you set ARIA Live to be polite, like I've done, then the screen reader will tell the user about changes, but it won't interrupt what the user is currently doing. Alternatively, if you set ARIA Live to be assertive, then this indicates the screen reader is allowed to interrupt the user's current operation in an assertive manner. Some other properties you can set: ARIA Atomic. If you set that to true, it means the user will be told about all the content of the region if any changes occur. So for example, if a new item was added, I'll click stop there, then the user would be told about all of this region in an atomic manner. The opposite of that is to set atomic to be false, and that will just tell the user what's changed, and usually that's better. One other property you can set, ARIA Relevant. You can set this to be additions or removals, text or all, and that indicates what kind of change the screen reader is going to detect. If you set it to additions, the screen reader will only tell the user about new content that's added in the region, so new items that have been added in the list. And as you might imagine, removals would mean just tell me about what's been removed, or tell me changes in text content, or tell me about all changes. So ARIA Live is useful because it allows a screen reader to support changes that the visually impaired user wouldn't otherwise realize had happened. So ARIA is a very wide specification, very important if you want to build accessible applications. This is the website you need to have a look at to get full information about the range of capabilities provided by ARIA.